Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 97 Republic YouTube channel, where I'll be reacting to news and live events mostly pertaining to the UFC and European football. But I'll also keep you up to date with regards to other sporting codes, so make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and ensuring that you don't skip a beat, click the notification bell, guarantee it'll notify you. Alright? Let's go. So, I hope everybody is doing well. I hope 2025 is treating you like the favorite child of the family. Going into this video, basically we're going to rank the top 5 pay-per-view events of 2024. Seeing that this weekend will be the first UFC event of 2025, looking back at 2024, what was the best pay-per-view events and how did I rank them? Now, going into the rankings, picking the top 5 out of 14 potential events is like picking your top 5 favorite foods. You might go with a pizza, you might go with a burger, and then all of a sudden you see sushi walking by and you're thinking to yourself, is that part of the list? No? Okay, let's revisit the list. Now, this was very similar. It was picking an event, seeing, okay, this event was really good, and then you see UFC 306 walking by and you're thinking, yeah, that should probably be in it. So first off, I'm going to start with honorable mentions. Now, when looking back at the pay-per-view events of 2024, there isn't really a criteria. It's not based on pay-per-view buys, it's not based on the gate. It's basically just based off of one of the most important statistics, which is my biased opinion. So let's get right into it. So I'm going to start off with honorable mentions. UFC 301. We had Pantoja vs Usyk, incredible fight. We had Paul Craig getting his doors blasted off by Sayo Barayo. And in some way, UFC 301 was the Gilly card. We had Anthony Smith getting a guillotine victory over Vitor Petrino. We had Michel Pereira doing a backflip, accidentally kneeing his opponent in the face. Referees didn't care, judges didn't care, he gets a Gilly win. So overall, it was a brilliant card and could have been in the top 5 of 2024 pay-per-view events. Now, honorable mention number 2, as I previously mentioned, was UFC 306, the Noches UFC event, where we had a lot of Mexican fighters and overall an incredible card. Now, when I look back at this, the criteria I followed was the main event and co-main event. It has a lot of weight. But the whole card in itself, the main card, has to be intriguing as well. So even though we have a few cards where the main event wasn't as good, the rest of the card made up for it. And with regards to how the fight panned out, it doesn't necessarily have to be a KO or TKO victory or even a sub, any type of stoppage. You know, you get decision victories that are absolute spectacles. And it showcased in this card. So UFC 306, we had the main event, which was Merab vs Sean. It was very, very dominant victory for Merab, even though Sean had that late stint where he hurt Merab. The co-main event, same thing. Valentina basically just dominated Alexa Grasso. But the 3 fights before that was absolute cinema. So we had Diego Lopez and Brian Ortega. First exchange, Diego drops him with an overhand right, left hook. The whole fight was basically on a knife's edge from T-City's perspective. And then before that, my goodness, incredible. We had Zellhuber versus Esteban Ribovic. And let me just say it right now, this guy's a fan. Right, Esteban Ribovic, the guy's boxing was incredible. Man, that fight was insane. Ribovic getting dropped in the second round, or I think, and then Ribovic dropping Zellhuber in the third round. Zellhuber basically just had to survive the third round and did everything to survive the third round. It was an absolute spectacle. And then before that, we had Ronaldo Rodriguez versus Oda Osborne. And also incredible fight. Ronaldo Rodriguez escaping a very, very deep submission like a triangle choke. I've never seen it in my life. That guy just basically threw every single Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu rule out of the window, escaped, and then basically just grinded out a unanimous decision victory. Insane. So those are the two honorable mentions. Now starting off with the list. So at number 5, I picked UFC 299, headlined by Sean O'Malley versus Chito Vera. Now, even though the main event wasn't all that great, it was basically just Sean dominating for 4.5 rounds, and then basically at the end, Chito getting that body shot. But for the majority of the fight, and kind of for the whole fight, it wasn't really in doubt who was gonna win. But the rest of the card was beautiful. We had Peter Yan facing Song Yadong, Yan getting back on the win column in an incredible showcase once again of striking and basically just when to pick his punches. Peter Yan was an absolute beast in that fight. Then we had Gilbert Burns being up 2 rounds versus Jack Della Maddalena, only for Jack to finish him in the third, get the win. It was somewhat surprising to see it, but man, Jack Della Maddalena is an absolute stud. Then we had Michael Venom Page putting on an absolute striking clinic versus Kevin Holland. Holland at the end talking about how frustrated he was, couldn't get into range, couldn't pick up the rhythm. Just an absolute showcasing from Michael Venom Page. And then in the co-main event, we had Dustin Poirier getting absolutely bulldozed, okay? Bulldozed in the first round against Benoit Saint-Denis. And what does he do in the second round? Knocks him out clean. Right? That's why UFC 299 is my pick at number 5. At number 4 is UFC 304. And this card was in the UK and was headlined by Belal versus Leon. And interestingly enough, with regards to the main event and co-main event, it was the card of a rematch. So Leon obviously previously faced Belal and won, and Curtis Blades previously faced Tommy and he won. And interestingly enough, both of the guys that lost the first fight went on to win the second fight, and both in somewhat dominant fashion. Belal in the main event dominating Leon for 4.5 rounds, Leon then coming back at basically the end of the 5th round trying to get the finish, but he just looked flat the entire fight, and Belal went on to be the new welterweight champion. And in the co-main, we had Tom Aspinall finishing Curtis Blades in spectacular fashion and solidifying himself as one of, if not the best heavyweight in the world till further notice. But the rest of the card was really good. It started off with Arnold Allen versus Giga Chikadze. Giga obviously known for his incredible kicks, and Giga winning in the first round, Arnold Allen then going on to win round number 2 and round number 3, winning the fight. After that, we had Christian Leroy Duncan facing Gregory Rodriguez. Now, when I saw Gregory Rodriguez, my first initial thought, test this man. Alright, he looks like his piss would blow through a styrofoam cup. So if you're gonna test it, make sure you have a steel cup. Right? The guy is enormous for middleweight, and he's known as a BJJ type of fighter, specializes in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, won a lot of tournaments in BJJ, but the man's striking is incredible and he packs a lot of power, all of the power. And he went on to win and beat Christian Leroy Duncan, going to unanimous decision victory, and just an overall, it was a good fight. It was a really good fight. And then we also had Paddy Pimblett submitting King Green. It was King Green's first submission loss in his whole career, and basically it was a dominant display by Paddy. He fought him on the feet where everybody thought he would basically just shoot, and then it was King Green actually going for the takedown and then getting submitted. So overall, great card, UFC 304. That's why it is my pick at number 4. Now at number 3, UFC 305. Headlined in Australia, our boy Dricus versus Izzy. Dricus versus Izzy. It was one for the ages. A lot of heat, a lot of talk about who's Africa's real champ. But starting off the card, we had Prioritz giving the Leech his first knockout loss of his career. And seeing somebody get knocked out for the first time, there's a sense of happiness, but there's also a sense of sadness. Happy seeing that somebody is human, they can get knocked out just like every single one of us, and obviously sad because they get to wake up in a ring with thousands cheering. So mixed emotions in that one, but it was an incredible knockout. The Leech suffering his first knockout loss of his career. Then we had Tuivasa versus Rosenstrike. It wasn't that good, wasn't that great. Basically just Rosenstrike staying out of range and winning on points because he is technically the better striker. But then we moved on to an absolute war of attrition. The old stylistic matchup of wrestler versus striker, Matthias Gamrot versus Dan Hooker, and Dan Hooker displayed as much balls in that fight as you'd see in a cricket game. So yeah, Dan Hooker basically just willing his way to victory, and it was an absolute war. It was must-watch television. For the co-main event, we saw Kai Kara-France knocking out Steve Erceg. A disappointing loss for Steve, coming off of his Pantoja fight for the belt and then getting knocked out. I think Kai Kara-France should be next, and I think he is next this year, fighting Pantoja for the Flyweight Championship. And then in the main event, much anticipated Dricus du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya. A lot of smack talk going into this. Dricus saying he's the true African champ. Izzy's basically calling his bluff, saying he's spewing a lot of bullshit. And yeah, the fight itself was incredible. Dricus going on to win, handing Izzy his first submission loss of his career. All in all, just an absolute incredible card. That's why UFC 305 is number 3 on this list. At number 2, UFC 308, headlined by Ilia Topuria versus the Blessed Express himself, Max Holloway. Now, this card was synonymous with highlight reels, and it started off with one of those. But there were 2 fights on the card that wasn't bad fights. Lerone Murphy outstriking Dan Ige for 3 rounds. We had Ankalaev doing the same to Rakic. Ankalaev basically afterward talking about how he wanted to push the pace, how he wanted to press, make it a war, make it something the fans can enjoy, but Rakic just didn't comply. But the rest of this card, absolute cinema. Absolute cinema. We started off the highlights, and this is predominantly a case of the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the good being Shara Bullet knocking out his opponent with a double spinning back fist. Now, however you see or envision it in your head, it probably didn't go that way. Cause I saw it and I knew I had to take a deep breath because I was probably never gonna see it ever again. Reason being is no sane person attempts a double back fist. Like attempting one, sure, because it's not very predictable. And it has a lot of force behind it because of the rotation of your hips and so forth. But seeing someone attempt it twice is insane. Reason being is you don't really know where your opponent is. It's all prediction. Doing a spinning back fist, you're gonna predict where your opponent's head is. And this man didn't just predict it correctly once. He did it twice. And he knocked him out clean. So that was the case of the good. The case of the ugly was in the co-main event where Hamzat faced Robert Whittaker, and Hamzat immediately shot, controlled Rob on the ground, went for a submission, he went for a rear naked choke, but he didn't get underneath the chin. And then in Hamzat fashion, he just decided he's gonna start cranking, and he was on Rob's jaw, and yeah, you guessed it, he broke Rob's jaw. it was weird seeing it live because you saw Rob tap and you saw Hamza not being underneath the chin, so you wondered what happened. And then afterwards, Robert Whittaker sent a photo of it, what his teeth looked like, said he had a broken jaw and his teeth was all busted up. And that basically just emphasized how much power Hamza Chimaev has. And yeah, it was incredible, but it was ugly. And then going on to the case of the bad, seeing Max Holloway get knocked out by Ilia Topuria. Now, what I said previously about seeing somebody get knocked out for the first time, it doesn't apply here. Because being a big Max fan, it was emotional. It was emotional seeing Max get knocked out for the first time. But I'm also an Ilia fan. I think we're gonna be in Ilia's title reign for the foreseeable future. I don't really see anybody being able to beat him. Not even Diego. Diego's a stud. But yeah, Ilia basically going on his Spanish/Georgian Batman Bruce Wayne arc, where he just finds solace in beating the shit out of people. So yeah, that's why UFC 308 is number 2 on the list, because of the highlights and just, yeah, the case of the good, the bad and the ugly. Now at number 1, without a doubt, is UFC 300. Now I think it's common knowledge that UFC 300 was the best pay-per-view event of 2024. This card was about as stacked as a guy competing at the Mr. Olympia. There were household names everywhere. And with all of these milestone events, whether it pertains to UFC 100, 200, 300, potentially 400, and potentially till the day we cease to exist, the UFC make it their mission to put on an absolute spectacle at these milestone events, and UFC 300 was no exception. So initially it was reported that UFC 300 would be headlined by McGregor versus Chandler, and then later on we found out that the McGregor wasn't going to compete at 300, and we were all extremely disappointed, and we thought there's no way that they could replace this with something that would live up to the hype as much as Conor versus Chandler, and we got proven wrong. The UFC put on an incredible card. Started off with Bo Nickel submitting Cody Brundage, Bo Nickel being dominant Bo Nickel, and yeah, he's a threat at middleweight division for the foreseeable future. Then after that, we had Charles Oliveira taking on Arman Tsarukyan for what would be a potential number 1 contender fight in the lightweight division. And the biggest disappointment of this match was the fact that it wasn't 5 rounds. It would have been incredible seeing Charles Oliveira face Arman Tsarukyan for 5 rounds. And yeah, Arman basically wrestled Charles and he dominated him. And apart from 2 deep submission attempts by Charles, where Arman survived the one and the other one he got saved by the bell, Arman was pretty dominant in that fight. But then we moved on to the BMF title bout between Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje. Now, setting the scenario on how it happened, Max basically broke Justin's nose in the first round. So Justin couldn't breathe through his nose, he had to use his mouth. That just tires you way more, and Max ended up dominating the fight. So he was up 4 rounds, and in the 5th round, in the last seconds of the 5th round, Max points to the ground to basically invite Justin to stand at the center of the octagon in the pocket, and both guys would just start swinging until one gets offed. And to Justin's demise and to his own peril, he complied, and then he concussed. Max knocking out Justin in dramatic fashion. That would probably be one of the best knockouts ever, just because Max was up 4 rounds. He didn't need to do it. He could just coast it to a decision victory, but he decided no, he wanted to either go out as a gladiator or send Justin out as an ex-gladiator. Then we moved on to the co-main event, the battle for China. Zhang Weili faced Yan Xiaonan, and an extremely incredible fight. Back and forth, you know, Wei Li dominating, then Xiaonan dominating, then Wei Li, then Xiaonan. Just an incredible fight, an absolute spectacle for a neutral viewer. And even though if you're a big fan of Xiaonan, she lost the fight, but she gained a lot of respect from the MMA community. And then the main event gave us this. Alex Pereira sung a lullaby, sweet dreams, to Jamal Hill and left him concussed, taunting his corpse in spectacular fashion. And there was no better way to cap off what was a milestone event for the UFC. So that is my top 5 list. Let me know in the comment section if there's any event you think I missed. Make sure to like the video, click the subscribe button, and click the notification bell. See you next time.